Right, we are on, sir. Right, so today we are honored to be joined by the mighty Mr. Stephen Donziger, a human rights lawyer whose life became the stuff of Hollywood thriller movies after he successfully challenged the big oil scumbag Chevron in court for their crimes in Ecuador in the 90s, and who has been punished in the most despicable and Kafkaesque ways ever since. You will not believe what you're about to hear, so let's not keep the man hanging any longer. Stephen, thank you so much for giving us your time today. How are you doing, brother?
Thanks, man. I'd say I've been on a lot of these things. That's one of the more interesting intros. I appreciate that. Fully accurate, all that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that because as you said, you do a lot of interviews and you've got a lot of stuff going on right now, which we want to get into. Before we jump into that, I just want to ask you, I want to check in. How are you doing, man? How are you doing? Because your life has been, should we say, you said the word interesting. I think that definitely applies to your life generally. How are you doing right now, man?
Well, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Look, this is the bottom line. I've been a hunted man for 12 years by an oil company and by an industry. They want me silenced, if not worse.
Yeah.
And, the work and tenacity and support I needed to get through all that, really came to define, the last decade of my life in a way that I never thought I would have to do that just to get through it. But here I am, and I'm actually as strong as I've ever been in terms of how I feel about the case in Ecuador and just my personal situation, my family. So I'm doing great. I didn't expect this to sort of be my life.
Yeah.
But now that it is, we're making the most of it, and we're really fighting, hard to ultimately get compensation for the indigenous groups in Ecuador that I represent as a lawyer that Chevron owes money to after they poisoned their ancestral lands down in the Amazon. So, we're doing well, but thanks for asking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, mate. I must say you're looking well as well. Now, for some of the things you've already mentioned there, for some of the people that don't know your story, and I can't imagine that's many people because this is a massive scandal that's been going on for a long time now. But just to set a bit of context for the rest of the conversation, if you don't mind, for the 10,000th time, could you just give us the brief history of your story in your words, not mine?
Yeah, thank you. By the way, what I'm about to say, the best summary of it is a story in The Guardian written by Aaron Brockovich, published in 2022. So if you Google Aaron Brockovich, Stephen Donziger, you can get a lot of what I'm about to say documented. Right. So the fundamental story is when I got out of law school in the early 1990s, I'm kind of an old dude now. I was invited to go down to the Amazon of Ecuador with a team of lawyers and doctors to investigate what we had been told was this massive oil pollution. We went down there in April of 1993. We were shocked at what we saw. There were massive pools of oil gouged out of the jungle floor that Texaco, now Chevron, had left behind when it abandoned the company a year earlier in 1992. So, being lawyers, we decided to represent a lot of the communities, indigenous communities and farmer communities in this area. Many of them were obviously suffering. They had lost access to the forest. These are the indigenous groups had relied on the forest for, millennia. I mean, these are people with no money as we understand it in the UK or the United States, yet they're wealthy and they're prosperous. Their medicines came from the forest, their food, their water, their shelter. They didn't need money. But once the pollution began in the 1960s, when Texaco went in there, and by the way, Texaco made a decision to pollute as a way to save money. We're not talking about an accidental oil spill. We're talking about a system of oil extraction designed to offload literally millions of gallons of cancer-causing oil waste every day into rivers and streams that local communities were relying on for their drinking water, their bathing, and their fishing. And by the time we got there in 1993, it was very evident, this had been going on for 25 years at that point. It was very evident that these communities were decimated and were literally on the verge of extinction. One group, the Tetete indigenous group, had already disappeared for a combination of reasons, oil pollution being one of them. That happened in the late 1960s, early 1970s. So, I entered a situation as a young American lawyer with the highest stakes imaginable. Literally, the survival of cultures was in play. So we filed a lawsuit back in the United States where Texaco made the decision to pollute in Ecuador. in federal court, actually here in New York, where I live. For 10 years, Texaco and then Chevron, because Chevron ended up buying Texaco, fought our lawsuit. They fought to get it dismissed into the courts of Ecuador. And that took 10 years. Ultimately, they won that battle, but they, as a condition of that, they had to accept the jurisdiction of Ecuador's courts. So starting in the early 2000s, we had to organize a legal team in Ecuador and reopen the case in Ecuador's courts. That's what they wanted. So we did that. Over the next 8 or 9 years, they did everything they could to sabotage the trial. They delayed every proceeding. They filed hundreds of motions in a single day to tie up the judge with, frivolous decisions. And ultimately, they attacked me. They attacked all of our lawyers in newspaper advertisements. I mean, they didn't really go to court to litigate on the issues. They went to court and they tried to weaponize it to destroy the case. That sort of was their legal strategy. And over 8 long years, and during this time, I went to Ecuador for my home in New York, probably 10, 15 times a year. And I've been there, by the way, over 250 times since the early 1990s. We prevailed. And ultimately, the case was affirmed by Ecuador's Supreme Court in 2013 in a unanimous opinion. And Chevron at that time owed around $10 billion to the affected communities. It's now gone up because of interest, because it's obviously now, 12 years later. But what they did instead of paying is they attacked me with the most vicious, well-financed corporate retaliation campaign ever, targeting a lawyer in the history of the United States. They literally used 60 law firms, 2,000 lawyers and legal personnel. Chevron spent probably $2-3 billion in fees to try to destroy me and my family and my colleagues down in Ecuador. And they basically decided that that was the move, that they'd have a better chance of not having to pay the communities that they poisoned in the Amazon if they drove the lawyers off the case. And that was their plan. So I ended up in 2013 getting sued personally here in New York for $60 billion. I got sued by Chevron for the most amount of money anyone's been sued for, or any company's been sued for, in the history of the United States. And this is my apartment, by the way, where I live with my family, my wife and my son. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, I'm a human rights lawyer. I don't have any kind of wealth. And ultimately, Chevron, the little money I had, they took that because they got a judge to order me to reimburse them for their own legal fees that they used to pay lawyers to persecute me. And all this went on for several years. And ultimately, when I wouldn't give up, and we won a bunch of very positive court decisions in Canada, Canada's Supreme Court, by the way, in 2015, issued an opinion in favor of the Ecuadorian communities, allowing them to go seize Chevron's assets in Canada to force compliance with the Ecuador judgment that they won. So when that happened, they got this U.S. judge here in New York, where I live, to order me to turn over my computer to Chevron. And I said, I'm not going to do that, because on that computer is all our confidential case file. And I've never seen such an order. It's illegal. And I appealed it. And while I was appealing this order that I believed was illegal, the judge had me locked up on a criminal contempt of court charge. And in the United States, by the way, judges can charge criminal contempt, but that's the only crime they can charge. It's the executive branch, the same in the UK, that charges crime. In the UK, it's the prosecutor. It's not the judge. Same in the United States. But this judge charged this crime. The Department of Justice in the United States, the entity that does all federal criminal cases, refused to prosecute me. And the judge at that point appointed a oil and gas corporate law firm, a private law firm that had Chevron as a client, to step into the shoes of the prosecutor and prosecute me directly. So at that point, after I'd been sued for the most money ever in U.S. history, I then became the first person in U.S. history to be targeted with a private corporate prosecution, in this case by Chevron, by the very oil company that I and our legal team had just vanquished in Ecuador's courts to the tune of a $10 billion judgment. They essentially, these lawyers I beat in a fair proceeding, came back and did this corrupt thing and prosecuted me directly. And as part of that, they had me locked up for almost 1,000 days. I was locked up for 993 days on a misdemeanor contempt of court charge that had been rejected by the Department of Justice. I mean, it's batshit crazy. I tell you, it's never happened before. It's obviously a violation of the rule of law. It's obviously illegal. 5 U.S. judges, federal judges, have ruled it is unconstitutional. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention issued a unanimous opinion that it violates international law. But in the meantime, I lost 3 years of my liberty, and they took my passport, so I cannot travel out of the country. That is, I cannot go visit my clients in the Amazon rainforest that I've represented for 30 years who need legal help to be able to clean up their ancestral lands and stave off extinction. So my current situation is they took all my money, they took my bank accounts, they took my law license, and they took my passport. Okay. I started a legal defense fund, which I would urge people to take a look at because I basically survived. My wife has a modest job. She works for a nonprofit arts organization. Okay. I don't have a job because I can no longer work as a lawyer because they took my law license. So I had to start a legal defense fund and basically make an appeal to the world for people to help. And thank God, I'm so incredibly moved and grateful that literally thousands of people all over the world have donated, small sums of money into this fund that allows us to live at the modest level we do and pay very significant legal fees I still have to pay to kind of deal with this. There's still all sorts of residual legal issues. Chevron is still attacking me, with PR campaigns. They're hunting me. They don't want me to do my work. They don't want me to travel. They don't want me to go organize lawsuits to enforce the judgment in other countries. So I'm really, really hobbled. Now, final thing I'm going to say. My game plan right now is I'm seeking a pardon for this misdemeanor contempt of court conviction, which happened in a non-jury trial based on this Chevron prosecution. I'm seeking this from President Biden, who now has 4 more days in office. He leaves office at noon on Monday. So I have been fortunate to get 34 members of our Congress to send him a letter urging a pardon. And I have the support of many lawyers, 68 Nobel laureates, and many, many prominent people who, regardless of their politics and regardless of what they think of my work or me as a person, recognize that it is just plain wrong for a corporation to be able to directly criminally prosecute a critic and jail him or her. That's just wrong. That's illegal. So a lot of people have rallied to my cause. And, my argument to President Biden is the same. It's like, what are we doing in the United States of America if a corporation can lock someone up? There's some extreme stuff happening, by the way, around the world now, as everybody knows, including in the United States. Okay. But that's just over the top. And I think, regardless of one's political orientation, people agree it's wrong. So I'm really urging the president to pardon me. It would allow me to much more easily get my law license back and continue my work as a human rights lawyer, travel again, work again, earn an income, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not free, even though I no longer have my ankle bracelet. When I was detained all that time, I was mostly in this house with an ankle bracelet. I couldn't leave. They would monitor my whereabouts everywhere I moved. I moved from one side of the couch to the other. They knew that. Okay. I was monitored electronically for 3 years. Even though I no longer have that ankle bracelet, I still can't fully function as a citizen in the United States of America because of all these restrictions Chevron has put on me as a result of this corporate prosecution.
Wow. Well, I mean, I
said I would say that quickly. I don't know. It probably took like 10 minutes, but it's a hell of a story, and it's really hard to explain in 5 seconds.
Well, exactly. And I must say, you've eviscerated about 10 of my next questions, so that's great. But I mean, I'm familiar with all of that, but even then, just listening to it, it fucking blows my mind. It is just unheard of. It is unprecedented, and it is absolutely mind blowing that this can happen, and it's happening right now. So for anyone that's hearing this for the first time, I can't imagine how getting all of that in one go is just going to fucking smash their mind open. I mean, we know that the priority right now for yourself and everyone that is behind this is the pardon. Because if you get the pardon, that changes everything, doesn't it? If you don't get it, And obviously
Yeah.
with the new guy taking the job on Monday, what does that mean for you? And what would the next step be in this campaign?
Well, I decided a long time ago when they started to attack me that even, we won the case in Ecuador. By the way, just please understand, everyone, that these attacks are happening because we won. Okay. They're happening because we won. The communities of Ecuador won a landmark $10 billion environmental judgment, the largest in world history, against an American oil company over deliberate pollution it caused. Okay. So I'm carrying that to my grave. Like, the main legal case I worked on in my life was victorious, and I'm really proud of the work our team did. I'm proud of the leadership down in Ecuador. By the way, it's not my case. I'm just the lawyer. Like, it's the communities affected by Chevron's pollution that won the case. So I'm really proud of that. And we're going to take that to the bank. Now, the problem is they haven't paid the judgment. So there's a whole other, bucket of legal work that needs to be done around the world by various lawyers to force them to comply with this judgment, which includes filing lawsuits in countries where they have oil assets, refineries, reserves, marketing lubricants, whatever they have, whatever assets they have, say in Canada or Australia or Brazil, or, because Chevron operates in dozens and dozens of countries around the world. We need to go get those assets and force them to give them to the people of Ecuador, where they can be sold with the money used to clean up. Now, what would happen in these kinds of, they're called, judgment enforcement cases, is if it was clear to Chevron that it was going to lose even one of these cases, rather than deal with the tumult and the humiliation of losing, they would then come to our legal team and we'd figure out a solution where they could pay a settlement to the communities that they have harmed for so many years. So that's the next phase of the battle in the case. The next phase of my battle personally is to get the pardon, get my law license back and get my life back in order so I can focus, instead of focusing on things like give me a pardon, I can focus actually on the human rights work that my clients engaged me to do over 30 years ago. I also want to say, if President Biden does not pardon me, I will be very disappointed in him and his administration, which, they ran on a platform of upholding the rule of law, protecting the Amazon. By the way, the president was just down in Brazil a few weeks ago. After Trump won the election, Mr. Biden went to Brazil, met with indigenous groups, and promised to protect the Amazon. Well, what could be more important than protecting a lawyer who's dedicated the bulk of his legal career to protecting Amazon peoples from the ravages of the fossil fuel industry? So, he needs to do this pardon, in my opinion. I mean, I need it for personal reasons because I need to be able to live, bro. But, he also needs to see my request as an opportunity for him to send a clear message to the world, to the United States of America, to people in the UK, to the corporate sector across the world, that private corporate prosecutions will never again be tolerated. We have professional prosecutors for a reason. How the heck can a private entity take over the public function of the government to lock up its critic? I mean, it's just its main critic in my case. It's just astounding. By the way, it's not like this is a widespread problem. Frankly, I've never seen it before in the United States before it happened to me, and it hadn't happened since. And frankly, I've never seen it in another country. I mean, usually when a prisoner of conscience, a dissident, a person who, confronts the power structure a little too effectively, when they need to get rid of that guy, it's usually the government doing the dirty work, like what happened with Julian Assange, So for a company to do it is just, again, it's like the system has really gone off the rails. And by the way, if there was a new rule that a private corporate prosecution could never again happen in the United States, like, we still have a problem. Like, corporations have way too much power. There's a massive amount of corporate capture of governmental functions in the United States. I've been doing this work, human rights work, justice work, my entire career. It's been almost 40 years now. And the trajectory is not good, like, especially with Trump coming in. But I want to say this. If Mr. Biden does not pardon me, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to try to get a pardon from the next occupant of the White House. And no matter what people think of Donald Trump, I actually believe that he could seriously consider a pardon of me for many, many reasons, including the fact there's a strand of his politics that is very anti-corporate. It's very, like, for example, appointing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to a cabinet position.
Yeah.
I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s entire perspective when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry and the government, the National Institute of Health of the United States, is fundamentally to call out corporate abuse.
Yeah.
And, so Trump has this streak in his overall governing philosophy, to the extent there is one, that really gets what happened to me. The weaponization of the law to target someone who speaks uncomfortable truths. So while I really disagree with Mr. Trump on pretty much everything he proposes to do, I don't disagree with all of it, because, like, what RFK is going to do, I believe, is really set a new tone about really holding some of these pharmaceuticals accountable for their abuses. So, maybe it'll happen. Bottom line is, I decided long ago to try to fight everything they threw at me, if for no other reason than to call it out and point out the hypocrisy. So I'll keep fighting, and I'll do what I can without a pardon to ultimately be able to travel, get a passport, and, help the people of Ecuador, who I'm very close to, that I represent for many, many years, and also help other people in vulnerable communities around the world, including in the United States, who suffer human rights violations. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
So, but I'm there's 4 days left, bro, for Biden. And, like, he pardoned 39 people plus his son back in, I think it was in November, early December. He hasn't pardoned a single person since. I do know, they've as much have said in the White House, he is going to pardon more people before he leaves office. So there's some list that he's going to announce any day now. It might even be Monday morning. Often presidents announce the final pardons literally the morning of the last day. Yeah. So I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic. This makes a lot of sense to do for him, and for any president, regardless of politics. So I really, given what I put up with, it's crazy, but I haven't actually lost faith in the good faith of human beings.
That's
and
amazing.
even in the ability of the system to deliver justice in certain instances, So I'm not giving up. I believe in the rule of law. It was corrupted in my situation. It's been corrupted in many other situations, in the United States and other countries. But, man, I'm going to fight for the aspirations of what the law promises for as long as I'm alive.
Love it. Love it. Well, more power to you, man. And you've got the support of many, many people around the world. And on that note, I'd like to ask, how can people support you? You said you've got your defense fund. Where can people find that, and how can they support you and support this campaign moving forward?
So the best place to go online is our campaign website, and it's called freedonziger.com, not .org. My name is spelled Donziger, so it's one word, Free Donziger, because I'm not free. So I want to be fully free. And on that website, you can learn a ton about the case. There's articles. There's my pardon petition. And at the top, there's a button where you can donate money to my legal defense fund. If you click the donate button, it goes to the defense fund. And just to be clear, the money is used so we can live, survive, me, my wife, and son, and also to pay legal fees. So, part of what I like, look, we need money. We always need money to do this work because I don't have a job. So the support of people around the world allows me to continue advocating, both for the people of Ecuador and broader human rights issues. If you can't give, don't worry about it. I get it. It's hard times for a lot of people. Go anyway to the site and pop in your email, and you will get on our list, and we'll give you a bunch of, every now and then letters, updates about the case. And, part of what we try to do is enlist as many people as possible, and it just helps. It helps in so many ways to get support like that. And for Chevron to see that support that I have makes it much less likely they will attack me again. It actually provides protection to me.
Yeah.
So give us your email. And by the way, if you can only give £1, don't you guys call a pound a quid? Do it, because it's not just the money, it's the number of people enlisting that really counts.
Love it.
So anyway, it's freedonziger.com, and, join the campaign, because this is also it's not just a Stephen Donziger thing. Like, we're truly building a campaign around broader human rights issues, mostly related to corporate silencing of activists, which is now happening in your country. It's happening in the UK, happening in the United States, to a frightening extent. I mean, I'm kind of the canary in the coal mine. Like, my case was like the first one back in 2000. Obviously there's been tons of efforts to silence activists over many, many years in both our countries. But like, this was kind of a new animal, like a private corporate prosecution. So, we're seeing these trends, in lots of areas, particularly in the climate justice field, where companies and government prosecutors are going after activists, locking them up for draconian periods of time. And we need to be aware that this is part of the playbook of the fossil fuel industry in particular, but also the other big powerful industries, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry. They want the tools in place legally to try to intimidate people who would hold them accountable for their abuses. And they want to use my example of having spent almost 3 years in detention, to weaponize that, to try to basically tell people, man, you do this work at the level this guy did it, you start getting billions of dollars of judgments, legal judgments against us, you're going to jail. Yep. And it's really designed to discourage people from even doing the work, discourage people from becoming lawyers who have the vision of holding these companies accountable on a scale that would really matter, that might actually change their behavior. They don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, in the last few minutes that I've got you for, you've pretty much covered this already, but I wanted to finish with what are the larger lessons from your story? You've already mentioned a bunch of them already, but to you, it's such a crazy, unparalleled situation. Expanding it out beyond the Ecuadorian situation and your personal situation, what are the larger lessons that all of us can take from this to arm ourselves moving forward with, whether it's an oil company or a climate campaign or whatever it might be? What can we take from this?
Well, look, we got to do the work, or we're going to lose the planet, and we're going to lose any hope of creating a just society. So, the number one lesson to me is engage. And don't be cynical, even though we're seeing a lot of very disturbing trends right now in the world. Like, be earnest, be smart, and design campaigns that may or may not include a legal component, but design campaigns to call out the abusers, and try to use those campaigns to mobilize people, organize people, give people an opportunity to engage. There's so many young people now who are like, what do I do? What can I do? And do something, engage in something, some campaign in your community, or some campaign on the national level or the international level. Get involved and figure out what your role can be and how it can be productive. And, the other thing I can say is, if you're going to organize a campaign against a well-resourced adversary like an oil company, be smart about it. What we need to do is organize teams of people, so not one person is sticking out, which makes the campaign vulnerable, because if the company can get rid of that one person, the whole campaign can really suffer. So it's critical to work in teams and collaborations, and also to build solidarity, support for what you do. Because these companies, when they don't want to be in court, by the way. They want to knock out the case before you can get to trial if you do a lawsuit. So it's very important that when they assess your strength, they see a lot of people involved and they see a lot of public support for what you do if you can organize that. And then, and really the most important thing is be prepared to be attacked. Expect it. It's actually a sign of your success.
Right.
And in all those attacks, I have found in my long career, there are huge opportunities to turn the tables. So, these attacks are designed to psychologically unsettle advocates. So they they stop doing what they're doing. And trust me, they can be very unsettling. But that's why you need solidarity. You need to work in groups. You support each other and you keep going. Because once you call a bully out and once you show a bully you're not going to quit, they often back off.
Yeah, right.
So, when you're attacked, it's a good thing. Well, people know it's a good thing. It means you're being effective. They would not attack you if they weren't bothered by you, if you weren't creating risk for them. So understanding the dynamics of change, of power, how these entities are going to react to your progress and your success so you can keep going to reach your goals is really, really important. By the way, much of what I'm saying now is not taught in any university, any law school. Yep. I speak a lot at law schools. The students are like, wow, we wish you could be on our faculty. But the reality is most law professors have never done this type of work.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to teach it. And of course, law schools aren't set up to teach people to do this. They were set up to teach young lawyers how to serve wealth and power. That's what the function of a law school is in American society, with maybe 5% of the students doing public interest work. Yeah. But they want 95% of the students to really, generate as much money as possible for themselves and their clients.
Yeah.
So understand what you're getting into, educate yourself on how to do the work, build solidarity, and be smart about your objectives, and don't give up. That's my advice.
Love it. What a beautiful way to end, and what an example you are of that very sentiment as well. So Stephen, thank you so much for giving us your precious time today. You've got a lot happening right now, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me, man. I really, really, really appreciate it. I want to just say before I go, it's people like you and others who do podcasts, what I would call the independent media, that has enabled me to survive. No lie. The corporate media has completely ignored this story for the most part.
Right.
And it's individuals like yourself who keep it alive. So we have more power than we realize. So let's just keep trucking. You keep doing what you're doing. I'll do what I'm doing. And, we're making progress.
Appreciate you, brother. We'll get that link out in the show notes as well. We'll smash that hard and see if we can get as much support behind this. And let's hope Biden gets a spine and does the right thing. He's got 4 days. The world's watching. So we're rooting for you, brother.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate the time.
Speak to you soon, Stephen. Best wishes, mate. Speak to you soon. Thanks, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Stephen Donziger, ladies and gentlemen, put it together for him. Now, usually I do a bit of top and tailing on this podcast, but this is an emergency episode that we're putting out with some gusto today. This conversation literally finished about an hour ago, and we are smashing this out in super quick speed because this is the first guest we've ever had on this podcast who was actually hoping to be pardoned by the President of America within the next 3 or 4 days. So we are smashing this out. We are chucking the production value to the back burner and just getting this out as a matter of urgency. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify or anywhere other than YouTube, if you go to YouTube, you can actually see for the first time on the James Kennedy podcast the video version of this, where you can see two handsome motherfuckers talking about important shit. We are back in the podcast saddle, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to hear more of these chats, and boy, we've got some good ones coming up, please do subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it from, whatever platform. All you got to do is click that button, and it really helps us out. Obviously, share the links and the clips and everything as well. It really does help the cause, not just for myself, but for the guests that I have speaking to me. And most importantly of all, please go to freedonziger.com, as Stephen asked you to. And if nothing else, just check out the information there, educate yourself on the issues, and please, if you can't donate and support the guy directly, please do share and amplify the content and the work and the message, because it is so important. On that, I'm going to leave you to it. get clicking. I'll see you next week. Love you loads. And come on, Biden, baby. Do the right thing.